This is a very personal episode this time because it's the first time that I have invited a performance expert. And when I think back about my life, it's almost like it is divided in two parts. The one that I was fully dedicated to work without anything else in my life. And then the part that I started by ruining my mental health, which in fact triggered a lot of my interest on understanding what went wrong. This was also the time that I heard about the impact of physical activity on work performance, things like improved cognitive function, enhanced energy levels and mood, increased productivity and time management. I didn't know all that stuff. Or if I have heard, I have associated it with that image of people going with big muscles going around, and maybe that they weren't that clever. Sorry to say that, but this time, and I wanted to have someone who really knew, who really knows about this topic, because only then I understood that there was a ton of research on that specific topic. My guest today is Mauro Stara, who is a fellow Swiss, by the way. He's the founder of Six Packs uh, and also a peak performance expert. Mauro, I'm really glad that you were the right profile to have this discussion because people do not want to understand how many exercises they should be doing per day, but they want to understand if there is really a correlation between uh, physical activity and how much they can perform at work, because we all want to be successful. And you have, I have been listening to certain of your videos. I have been reading about you, and you have a wealth of knowledge about the science behind that is not only about the physical activity, but you talked a lot about hormones. And one thing that I found very interesting is your transition, because you come from the business side and you move to something completely different. Can you tell me a little bit more about these transitions? You were in banking, which is, by the way, super cliche about Zurich people, huh? To be in banking.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon career for many people in Zurich. But yeah, I was for 5.5 years in banking in Zurich, Switzerland, and after that, I transitioned into the or full time into the fitness and health industry. And about 2.5 years into my career, in banking, I realized that while it was good and you can have very successful career and make very good money, there there was a different calling for me. And one, I didn't want to have a boss.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be in the corporate space, in the corporate ladder. But number three, I wanted to help people make a lifelong transformation, and the reward that comes with that. I never really got that from banking or from the work in corporate environments, where here I can make a transition directly, or transformation directly in someone's life. And to give a little bit more detail and background, so as I was in banking, on the side I was training people in person, so a little bit of personal training, the full-time banking job, and then I was building, you could say, like a supplement drink company on the side that was not successful, which is okay. And as I was doing or attacking those three things and chasing wealth, eventually I gave up my health in the process and burned myself out. I was fatigued all the time, very poor sleep, low energy, low libido. And it got so bad that I had started getting issues with my heart. So my heart health wasn't great. And, very young, mid, early 20s, not so good. You walk in there to the cardiologist and you see people all in their 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you're the guy in his early 20s. What did I do? I don't really belong here, at least yet. And that was kind of like the wake up call, and where I drew the line and said, okay, enough is enough. And that's where or when I quit my daytime job and transitioned full-time into the online fitness world.
Mauro, so I'm pretty sure that people comes to you with a lot of frictions, pretty like thoughts that they have, perceptions that they have that this is only nice to go and do some sports, some physical activity, to be mindful about what we eat, and to be mindful also about the science that your body is telling you, because your body is telling you, but you are so much overworked that you don't notice. So, what are for you the biggest misconceptions that people have about this understanding of the impact or the relationship between physical health and productivity?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I guess it depends where someone is on their timeline. Like different people are at different stages, but based on the question you asked, I believe a lot of people, especially if we take like, Zurich or the banking world, but even like if we would take Wall Street and the banking world in the US or really anywhere in the world, that a lot of people associate fitness with vanity. They think, oh, it's all about looking good at the beach and having a six pack or having a toned body. And yes, that is a big part. And I think more people than not deny that they want that, meaning they really want that. But on the outside, they say, I don't want it because it's not really always what society wants to see. So they hide behind that, let's call it political correctness, so to say.
Mm,
So that is one part. But the other part is a lot of people overlook that ultimately how you feel is how you perform. So if you don't feel great, you won't perform at your best. That's very simple. And uh, the more and more people, and we can talk more about that, but more and more people, more and more companies are doubling down on wellness programs, health programs, because they see the impact of the performance, but also the ROI that comes with it for their company and the growth that comes with that in the longer period, but also the overall well-being. Like let's say you run a company and I would work for you, and let's say we wouldn't increase the productivity, but directly with energy and peak performance, but I would be happier because when I feel better, I'm happier, my brain chemicals, my hormones. So if I'm happier, I have a better relationship with you at work, then ultimately I'm gonna stay longer with you because I enjoy the role and I'm gonna give more into that role. And those are all things that are not measured
mm,
directly. So I think goes way beyond just the vanity, but also the peak performance aspect. But hey, these guys are taking good care of me at work. I'm gonna give reciprocity, so to say, there, and give them back what they gave me as well.
mm. Mauro, we were discussing just before this recording that you have been traveling all around the world. You spent some time in Latin America, in North America, in Europe, and we didn't discuss Asia, but probably also in Asia. And I wanted to understand. So, in these corporations that care about their people and they have available a wellness program, like the possibility for employees to go and use to do some physical uh, movement or to take care of their mental health. And like if in the case of the Middle East, for instance, I remember that I got a couple of weeks back some information that there was only 20% of the people who were using this benefit, that they have it available, but only 20%. And we're talking only about the Middle East. I'm not sure about the numbers in Europe. So what would you recommend to these companies that have invested in that, because it could be quite expensive also, these wellness program platforms that people can use, but if people are not using it, what would you recommend them to do to help people, to encourage people to do it?
Well, they don't have to put together like a full wellness programs with that can cost up to millions of dollars a year. They can start very small. Like for instance, they can say, hey, how about we hold one meeting a day, as far as possible, right? But one meeting a day could be outside walking. So again, if you and I would work together in a company, rather than just sitting inside at a table, why not go outside for a walk? Maybe a little bit harder depending where we are, like in the Middle East. So if it's in Dubai, it's really hot in summer, but you can still go in the early morning hours for a meeting, or at least, walk inside somewhere. But just moving your body, that alone is a small step. So we don't have to like uh, facilitate the entire thing, even though for bigger corporations that will make sense. But for smaller companies, let's say 1 to 10 employees, or even 1 to 20, there are very simple things that they can do there, such as that, or saying, hey, if you go to the gym during your lunch break or during work hours, we gift you 30 minutes of work. I have a client, he's very successful and CPA, and has a very big CPA firm in the US, in New York. And he invited me to do a presentation for his team, and I offered them that presentation, gave them insights on nutrition and lifestyle habits, recovery. And about a month later, he said, like, this was amazing. People are getting less sick, they feel better. I see the direct impact already after a month. And you know what? I told them if they want to work out, I go to the gym. I'm not going to pay the gym membership, but I'm going to give them 30 minutes of paid time during the day if they do that. And if they do that 2, 3 times a week, then they can do that without taking away time from work, so to say, and or having to go after work, where he created that bridge. And I thought it was very generous from him. And he, excuse me, he's smart to realize the long-term ROI on that.
I totally shared your perspective on that. It's not enough to just offer a platform. It should be kind of a cultural movement inside of a company. It should be from the top down, that people encourage this movement in order that people are engaged to take the stuff. If they see it just as an add-on to salary, to money, like an additional benefit, people will not do it. But if they see their peers, their bosses, the CEO be part of that movement, that where they want to take care of their mental health, or their physical health, or the way they eat, then people starts to be engaged. So it needs to be done so together with a movement of actions that are demonstrated to the rest of the organization. I'm totally with you on that. Mauro, I'm someone who is really interested on the science behind, because I cannot just believe like words that explain me, yes, you are going to be feeling better if you start. And that was one of my major frictions back when I think back about my previous life. Can you explain me a little bit more on the science that there is behind the link between the physical health and work productivity? Is there really a lot of research, or some and not serious?
So when I first started out, there was less, but there's more and more coming. I think, especially over the last 2 years, there's been much more exposure. Let's say the post-COVID area, there's been much more exposure and awareness on health and wellness at workplace. But yeah, so there's one study that they've done in 2015, and that was on how employees got sick, or they measured how often they got sick before and after implementing a worksite wellness program, and their impact on productivity. And they found that their employees got 14% less sick and productivity up by 8%. There's a meta-analysis, so what they done in 2019, and that showed a 5 to 11% increase in productivity at work. And there's one more that I've written down here from 2010. That was a little bit older, 10.3% increase in productivity. And employees are less sick there at work. So, we could say around 10% is a good ballpark when we look at that, but there's a little bit more context that we have to add. Number one is um, these are all bigger corporations that they've done those studies. So for a big corporation, 10%, like when you think about that number, it doesn't seem like a lot. But if they're making 500 million revenue in a year, then you play the percentages there, the magnitude of impact is a lot bigger. However, the other part is a lot of these studies that are done in corporations, these are done on employees, or mainly on people in a corporate environment that have stricter rules. But I believe when you look at a business owner or an entrepreneur, then the impact is much bigger. And the reason I believe that is because his productivity, or let me say like this, his business is directly linked to his energy and his productivity. And especially like, let's say 0 to 3 million stage, the impact is much bigger there for that person than a bigger corporation. Because if there are like 1,000 employees, one man doesn't matter that much. Even if he's at the top, yeah, but if that person dies today, the company probably will function well. But if it's in a smaller business, makes 2 million a year, and there's one CEO and an assistant and maybe marketing manager or sales guy, whatever that third person is, well, that impact of that one person there will make a much bigger difference. But because they're so small, they're not taken into these studies. So I think the smaller company, the bigger the impact's going to be, percentage wise, where if it's a very big company, the percentage is smaller, but the absolute number in revenue will be big. There's also one really interesting one. It's not really a study, but it's more like a case report from Johnson and Johnson. And they were like ahead of the curve. They've implemented wellness and health programs in 1995 or 1998. So, very, very long time ago, plus minus 3 decades. And in two different reports, they said for every dollar that they spent or invested into the health and wellness of their employees, for every dollar, they made back 2.7 to 3.9 dollars. So let's compare that. Let's think about a stock. Right? If you had a stock and every time you put in $100, $1,000, like whatever it is, you get 2.7 to 3.9 ROI. You probably would invest every single week a lot of money, maybe all your money into it, because it's predictable, it's very low risk, and there's a big ROI. And a lot of people don't see that connection there. But again, that's Johnson and Johnson, not your mom and pop shop around the corner.
I mean, you make it sound that 10% is not that big, but believe me, during the COVID times, I remember a lot of discussions with corporations about how to reduce only by 1% the rate of absenteeism. So people who are basically coming to the office and they are just frozen in front of the computer, they're using the chair, they're warming the chair, but they're not doing stuff. And 1% it was already a big achievement back then. And it was a hard stuff to reach. I also relate quite a lot with the comment that you made about for smaller companies, when you have like a company with only 3 or 4 people, how much it brings the impact. And it made me think about the fact that even though every single day it is struggle for me to go and decide I need to go to the gym now, every single day. It doesn't stop. It has never changed, but I fight it back and then I do it. But when I go to the gym, the thing is that it has an impact on the way my brain processes information. So my cognitive function is feels improved. And I was wondering if there was also some research about this correlation between the mental power that you have, your capacity to think faster and to have better decision making, and physical activity. Is there any research on that?
Yeah, there's 2008 paper, I think from Hillman et al. And that study found that regular physical activity, so what it put in that bracket would be walking, cardio, running, swimming, resistance training, is associated with improved cognitive function and also better memory, learning skills, attention to tasks, whatever, has been improved. There's another one from 2010, Smith et al., and they kind of showed the same thing in that study there, and they showed that especially for complex problems, the decision-making focus has been better. And ultimately, if you think about it, the higher we are in terms of hierarchy in a company, if we look at corporate, but if you look private, like a business owner, the more you scale a company, the less it is about how long or how much you work, rather it's the decisions you make. And if you can put yourself in a spot where you're at your absolute peak every time you make a decision, I think you're going to go very, very far and get there faster. And it's why Jeff Bezos, in many interviews, he said his sleep is one of the most important things that he looks out for and optimizes, because he knows that there are really only 2-3 decisions he has to make in a day that will move the company a certain direction. And if he gets proper sleep, he knows those decisions are going to be not just better, but more thought out. And that contributes to more growth than any other investment he has seen.
So it's funny that you mentioned Jeff Bezos, because I have the pictures of him by the late 90s when he just launched Amazon. And then I have the pictures of him maybe 5-10 years ago, where there is a radical change in terms of his physical health, because he looks well built. When he was younger, he was a little bit leaning. He had his skin a little bit more like dropping. It's incredible that he decided to optimize himself as well as he was optimizing his company. That's amazing.
Yeah, the more he optimizes himself, the more it will spill over to his company.
Yeah. And Mauro, so I was looking at your website, so I understood that there is many, not only the physical movement that can help people to perform better. You talk a lot about the food that you take. You talk a lot about sleep. And then there was one thing that it got stuck that I couldn't really understand, and I would like to have more explanation. You were mentioning about uh, talking about hormones. So for me, hormones is just like messengers, chemicals that are sending messages to different parts of the world. So tell me more about the hormones, because I had the question in the back of my head.
So let me, in terms of performance at work, or in what context?
In the context of overall well-being, you mentioned hormones, and I thought that could be an interesting part that I didn't know, in fact.
Yeah, so if we stay on the topic of peak performance and productivity, as you touched on, the different hormones communicate with each other throughout the day, throughout the night, and they will get impacted based on your environment, your input, your output, meaning what you eat, when you eat, how much you eat, what your environment you're in, and different activities throughout the day. And depending if your hormones are out of balance, meaning let's say your testosterone or blood sugar is very low, very high, you will feel differently, you will perform differently, you'll think to a certain degree differently. If you're anxious, depressed, tired all the time, that will impact those decision-making skills, but also how it makes you feel. So I believe that whether it's a physical transformation that someone is chasing or looking to have, optimal hormone levels will get you there faster, more effective. But if someone is willing to or interested to perform better at work, have more focus, more mental clarity, less brain fog, then that will be all linked there together. And the more we can optimize those, the better results someone's going to have with those outcomes that they want to achieve. And we do that by looking at blood work. So we get in advanced blood test, looks at 95 biomarkers, and that gives us a baseline and shows us what's under the hood. Someone kind of like when you go to a car mechanic that plugs in his device and says, bling, 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 here's what's going on. And that tells us, here's what's going on under your hood, and here's what's optimal, and here's what's maybe not so optimal. Let's pay more attention to that and focus on that.
I heard that this area of diagnostic, of looking at the different ingredients, if you want, of the blood, has become more complex, but at the same time, even better, because now you can use artificial intelligence, not like now, it started already like 5 years ago, that because there is a lot of correlations between chemicals that it is difficult to interpret. It's not like you are good on this and that's enough. No, there is a correlation, a balance that should be done between in the body. So that has improved quite a lot. So it is quite important. It's not the regular blood test for sugar and fat. It goes way beyond that.
Yeah, you know, like most people, they go to the doctor when they're sick, when they're not feeling well. So it's a reactive approach. The area we're entering now is that we're taking a preventative approach. Even if you have no complaints and you feel fine, you still get that in and look, hey, where am I at and what can I optimize? Because good is not great and great is not excellent. And you, by doing that, you can catch things earlier, long before it become a big problem. So if you see, hey, every year my testosterone is declining a little bit, or my prostate is, you know, the antibodies are going up and up and up. Well, if they've been going up for 2, 3, 4 times in a row now, do you want to wait till it gets into the red zone? Or do you want to maybe start doing something about it so that it doesn't go off the cliff and you can actually prevent that? Because a lot of people, the old way, a lot of people go to the doc when they have pain or complain. A lot of times, like, you may need surgery, you may need this, and it's almost too late. Like you got to the point of no return naturally, right? Like even if you make a lifestyle change, if you had a heart attack, you cannot return that, right? But if we can see, oh, okay, there's plaque being built up in the arteries. Now it's time to do something about it with lifestyle, with supplements, with medicine. We can prevent that.
But what is crazy is that our human brain is, I have the impression, is built to hope for the best. So if everything is okay, why should I optimize myself? We believe that we have the time. And the funny stuff is, and similar to my personal story, is that we wait until we are in the deep shit to go and do something about it. And it is too late. And you take time to recover and to be another person. And sometimes you don't end up lucky. That's the bad thing. Mauro, there is always like crazy people. I don't know if you are a fan of Tim Ferriss, for instance. The guy is optimizing every single thing in his life. So he almost sounds robotic, but I still like listening to him from time to time. So when is it too much where we are optimizing every single thing in our life, our food, our physical effort, our sleep? When is it is really exaggerating? Is there a way to do it in a more Zen way?
Fantastic question. It depends on each person. So for one person, you give them 2 optimizations and that's enough. The other can handle 5, 10. So every person has a different threshold based on their lifestyle. And that's why it's so important to integrate a program, a plan into someone's lifestyle. Now, if we generalize that, I would say, well, are you getting a good ROI from that optimization? And is it worth to keep doing what is necessary to do that? Ultimately, my philosophy is that you integrate a system in your life and you find a way to automate it in the sense of right now you've lifted your hand to drink, to take that cup of coffee. You didn't think like, oh, lift the hand. It was just automated, or like brushing your teeth. So how can you integrate it in your life that, let's say the optimization is, oh, I need to get 10,000 steps a day. Well, if you always think about it, there's a lot of effort. But if you say, you know what, from 10 to 11, I go every day for a walk or to the gym, and I integrate that. And now you know that time is blocked and it's automated. You don't have to think about it. So it's like a passive optimization in that sense. Versus if you always have to think about it, it's very hard to sustain long term. Eventually you'll forget it, right? So that's the way I see it. The more we can integrate it and maybe stack habits together and make sure that those are smooth and aligned in your schedule and your lifestyle, that's ultimately the goal.
Hmm. I love that because I'm a big fan of habit formation. And indeed, in order that the big changes happen, it's almost like you start with very low effort that you have to do. So even if it is like 5 push-ups, 10 push-ups, but you do it daily until it becomes a habit and there is no more friction in your brain. But then you have to consider also that you need a trigger, something to remind you that to do that stuff. So you have to associate it with either an existing habit, because at the end, motivation is always playing games with our brain. And if we don't feel like doing it, and if there is too much effort, we dump the stuff big time. Um, Mauro, I wanted to ask you because you another question that I it wasn't planned, but what is the red flag to identify? So you mentioned that it's important to have somebody to at the beginning to have this conversation, to have this personalization according to your lifestyle uh, about what you should be doing. So how do you spot the red flags of a bullshitter and a Mauro? How can be, because we don't know, we just see web pages and that's it. What should we test in order to identify the right person to help us?
You mean to identify the right person, coach, mentor to help you with
To
your
help
health
you
or
in that
any area of
change,
your life?
because there is a lot of people still that sells prep.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it depends also what you're buying. Like if you're buying a book, right? Maybe you don't have to do an extreme due diligence, or if you're
Yeah.
buying a higher end program, you absolutely should do it. There are a couple of ways you can go about it. One, are you able to speak to past or current clients? That is always very important. If there's transparency, like, yeah, sure, here's a list and happy to make an introduction, contact them. Number two, I can only speak for my industry, but in the fitness industry, everyone can take a before and after photo and slap it up. They can copy it and so on.
Yeah.
What we do on top of the before and afters are video testimonials. Because if you and I go on a call and you're a client that I've been working with, one, people see, hey, Ivan took his time to have a conversation with him. And number two, you cannot copy that. Like nobody can, well, maybe in the future with AI, but nobody can take me out and put a face of another coaching. Like that's real. That's the authentic part and the original conversation that they see. Okay, that client was on a call with him or gave a video testimonial there. So those are two there. And then number three, does what that person is explaining make logical sense? Can you look up the science, the studies, the evidence? Like, is there a case study? So if someone says, hey, here's why we do this and this and this, like, okay, makes logically sense. Does the science support that? That is another sign there. And number kind of back to number two, the testimonials. Like, I think a lot of people in the fitness industry make the mistake that they they look at how the coach looks rather than how the clients look. So if I start taking steroids and got really big and jacked, then I'll get more clients because people say, oh, he looks the way I want to look. And that's a false mindset. Like, you should not look at that person because, one, what if that person has above average genetics or is taking steroids, and maybe he's not. Maybe that person is natural and has regular genetics, but he's not able to get the client results, right? So it doesn't matter how muscular or fit or lean or shredded I am. What matters is the success of my students. And that's ultimately the number one criteria for our company. But also what I tell people is like, yeah, you can look at the trainer and say, wow, guy looks good. So what? That doesn't mean you will look that way. What's the evidence from all the other students? Oh, all the other students are also looking like him. Okay, maybe this is something I should go with Eber, where if there's nobody looking like the trainer, then yeah, he can look as good as he wants, but you will not get there. And a lot of people, I think, don't want to accept that.
Totally right. Mauro, let's take a time travel machine and let's go 20 years from now. So you are 20 years older, you're living this time in Bali, where you have your corporation and still traveling a lot. How do you see the future of the workplace wellness programs back then, 20 years from now? We know that in the last 10 years, it has changed. And especially during the COVID time, there was a big change in terms of how much corporations are caring about the specifics of the employees, their needs in terms of mental health, in terms of physical health. So how do you see what would happen in 10 years from now?
Yeah, fantastic question. So, it's always hard to predict the future, but we can make our predictions and see if they come true, and or at least how close we are. So sometimes it helps us use evidence from the past to catch current trends or look at other industries. But so a couple of things. One, I believe health and wellness programs will be foundational in corporations, for business owners, for a lot of people. Not everyone, but much more. So the percentage of companies that are using those will be significantly greater. I believe we're going to use a lot of tools and software to measure employee performance as well. So like an Aura Ring, a Fitbit, a Garmin watch, a glucose monitor could be like where there's a health and wellness, kind of like an HR team, health and wellness team that has a screen and monitors like, hey, how's the heart rate? Okay, these 10 people got in with good sleep. Oh, this guy is like, let me check with this guy. Hey, you seem a little bit sick today. Don't you want to take a rest or go home? Maybe even before they clock in at work, let's say there's a door, unless your sleep score or recovery is an 80, you have to stay at home and work from home that day and get some rest. That's something there. I think there was going to be a reward program. The person with better scores, health scores, fitness scores, will get some sort of reward, and they're more inclined to give that person an opportunity because they know, hey, that person is less sick, takes good care of himself or herself. And blood work, I also see that as a very important component. DNA test there in terms of that. I also think that if you look at food supply in bigger companies, a lot of times the quality is bad. I believe there's going to be a shift there as well, where there's still going to be like a lot of sugary stuff and treads, but there's going to be more offers on healthier food choices because they see the ROI, like once more and more companies that are leading in their field or leaders in their field start setting those trends, then medium-sized companies and even small ones will follow along and say like, hey, these guys are banking on that, and we can't afford not to use that to our advantage to create a stronger workforce in business.
I can easily imagine like a live stream dashboard for a person who is responsible for this well-being of the company, where, as you say, there is a lot of devices in order to measure how people are physically fit, also mentally. And having the live stream to say today it is a good day, that we can see the live organization having a good score in terms of mental health, in terms of physical health, and that certain decisions are taken based on that. Today is not a good moment, for instance, to do this type of task, but maybe something else, because you have all this information, and AI give us the opportunity to translate feelings, our moods, what we say, in order to test our mental health or test how we feel. And there is a lot of devices to measure, as you mentioned, the some blood, some part of our body. It's incredible that we are lucky, in fact, Mauro. We live in a country where I have the impression that close to 60% of the people are doing some type of physical activity. I see my neighbors in the village taking bikes to do 12 kilometers to go to work, which is quite impressive, because I was missing that part. I had forgotten that the average Swiss person likes physical activity. Now, comparing to this cultural trend in Switzerland, and you compare it to the Latin American way, like you have just been in some parts of Latin America. How is there something, is there a trend that is growing in Latin America that is closer to our culture?
I would say I see a worldwide trend in women being more in the gym. That's been my observation. If we look back 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, it was mainly younger men that were at the gym. So let's say 20 to 30, 35. That's like the average person. And then you start having people 50, 60 plus rehab. They saw, oh, my bone density is not so good. I need to strengthen my muscles, my core, my back, whatever it is. So there've been more and more those people. So again, reactive approach that joined the gym or more in the fitness industry. But recently, yeah, you could say like, I mean, recently, like 8 to 10 years ago, there's been a newer trend where women are more in the gym. And before, we would see women more yoga, Pilates, running a lot, like a lot of cardio, maybe swimming and dieting, eating salads. But over the last few years, more and more women are resistance training. They're getting stronger, they're getting more muscular. And that's like the biggest trend I've seen. If you look in the physical part of the fitness space, and just from my own life experience, that has been happening. And I think it's a good thing, because that will also help the men raise their standards. When I say, wow, like there's so many women that maybe bench more than I bench, and they can challenge them in a good way as well.
That's nice to hear. Mauro, I need to ask you one last question. Do you have like any particular personal success story that you have seen with either your clients, where you that can illustrate this link between physical health and work productivity? Does it some story that comes to your mind?
Oh yeah, so many. If we take one of them, I have an insurance agent that I've been working with since 2.5, close to 3 years. Yeah, he joined in 2021. He's from New York, very successful insurance business owner, 53 years old this year. And the first year that he joined the program, he dropped 4 pen sizes, 50 pounds down, and energy, everything approved across the board. And when I had a case study interview with him, I asked him, like, hey, aside from all, the weight loss and the energy aspects, like, do you feel there was an impact on your business? And he said, yes, absolutely. Now, keep in mind, that guy has been in business for over 20 years. So it's not that he discovered a new marketing tactic that hasn't changed, no new sales tactic, no new employees, nothing changed, except he changed the CEO and the leader. He doubled his business within the first 12 months. Now, I'm not saying every single person that gets in shape will double their business. That's absolutely unrealistic. But that has been an amazing success story. And I've been so happy for him because he said, dude, like, that program that has just paid for itself for the next 10 years with what is achieved in business because he was able to double it. And he was able to double it. He was not making like 5 or 10,000 a month. And it's like, okay, he was making 5, now he's making 10. No, like he was making very, very big numbers. And the fact that he doubled it after 20 years in business, the one thing that he told me was, man, I wish I had done that right when I started my agency. I would have grown it probably like, 5, 6 times to where it is today.
That's a beautiful story. And I think that it summarizes quite well the key messages that you have sent today. I mean, despite, regardless of if you succeed or not to double your business size, it is about that physical activity. There is a good correlation with the way you process information, your decision making. There is a good way to get also into the focus area, which is quite difficult more and more, especially because of the digital world, to focus. And when you do physical activity, you can focus in a better way. And also it prevents a lot of health problems that you may have. And also the other thing that you mentioned is about that it's not about big drastic changes, but to create reflexes or habits that you can continuously repeat, because that's the biggest friction that we have, is to how to start without thinking about it, without depending on our motivation. And it's a lovely story that you're telling, and that I wish somebody had explained me back then when I had this transition between my corporate life to my new life. Thank you very much, Mauro. Mauro, how can people can reach you out? Where can they find you if they want to know more?
They can follow me on social media, so Facebook or Instagram. Just put my full name in there, Mauro Stara, and that's where you find me.
So Facebook, Instagram, I will put the links, and I also have your link to LinkedIn, and I also have the link to your website, Sixpack.
Perfect. That's good.
Mauro, thank you very much for this lovely discussion. It was really, really nice to meet you. Good luck with your further travelings, and hopefully one day we can meet each other here in Switzerland.
Yeah, I can hit you up the next time I'm in Zurich. I think I'm gonna be there a few months.
By the way, for the people who don't know, there is only 2 hours difference by car from my place to his place in Zurich.
Small country.
Yes. Thank you, Mauro. Have an excellent day.
Thank you very much for having me on, Ivan. Thank you.